following segment is sponsored by Daniel A. White and Associates. It does not necessarily reflect the views of WDEL or Forever Media.
The Rick Jensen Show on 101.7 FM, 1150 AM, WDEL, and streaming to your smart speaker and mobile device.
You know, this seems to be a cycle. In fact, it obviously is a cycle. It's always going to happen with the markets, and it's up and down. It really is a roller coaster now for the last few months. Actually, for the last couple of years, it's just be up and down. And what do you do? Well, I'm very lucky. I met Dan White a few years ago, and then I got to know Andrew Wood over at Dan White and Associates. They're all financial planners specializing in retirement income. Great guys, brilliant, and it's always nice to have good advice from people who know what the heck they're doing. That's why I love Dan White and Associates. And every Wednesday after the news at 1:30, you get advice from one of these guys, or some little tip. But I also want to throw this in there. So if like me, you're serious about retirement income, you should give them a call. 888-690-8820. 888-690-8820. I know Andrew says he'd love for you to call him. Right, Andrew? You're on. So, but there's a whole lot of great people there as well. So, Andrew, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Rick.
Good. No, I'm glad you're here, too.
It's funny because we are in very uncertain times, and I think that's one of the biggest values that we provide is providing more certainty, and I think that's important, especially right now. Agreed.
So, what do you have for us today?
Well, I'm not sure how much you've been reading about Social Security. Just recently, I know talk about it a lot because I think it's important, and I've been helping specifically some clients recently. Just with the discussion and sometimes giving them some guidance to actually file. But a lot of things have been in the news. They might change how Social Security is taxed, but specifically a few things that have happened are happening like right now. So some major changes are taking place in March. I think I was on about a month and a half ago. Maybe even longer than that, about what was called the Social Security Fairness Act.
Yes.
That was something that repealed the windfall and the government pension offset.
Yeah.
So, basically, if you have a government pension from employment in which you did not pay Social Security taxes, but you still do qualify for Social Security, your benefits were reduced. They did away with that, and they are actually giving a lump sum payment retroactively from January of last year. So those retroactive payments are scheduled to go out by the end of this month. They do say if you are expecting that, wait until, give it a few weeks at least to reach out to make sure that you're taken care of there. So could be some big payments for some individuals that were negatively impacted over the years.
So I have a question about that. And for people who don't know, Social Security benefits were either eliminated or greatly reduced for people who had other government pensions, and so now they're going to get money. But how much are some of these checks going to be? I mean, this has been going on for quite a few years, right?
Yeah, but again, it's only retroactive from January of last year. So they're not going to retroactively do it for 10, 15 years ago.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I don't know the exact No.
If it was 10 years,
amount,
Andrew,
it's going to be.
If it was 10 years, it'd be a big number. It's like, wow, look at that, I got $50,000. Yeah, but you got to pay like $30,000 in taxes or something. So no, it's not going to be like that at all.
So actually, what I'm looking at, the average retroactive payment so far is about $6,710.
That's still good money.
Right?
I'll take it. I know. Yeah. The other, we've talked about Social Security too, and they have to change. They got to change something. Otherwise, I forget how many years it is, but they're going to have to reduce benefits by 15% or so if they don't change anything. What is the timeline on that?
When they're going to make changes, or
yeah. I mean, a timeline on when, if they don't make changes, it'll be reduced. Yeah.
I mean, there is a stack of bills that are, I guess, trying to address it. Nothing's been passed, but depending on which report you read, I believe the most recent update was 2034.
Okay.
Is when they might have to reduce payments. The reduction, I believe, it's estimated to be about 18 or 19%.
Ugh. Now they'll do something.
Yeah.
They have to. Otherwise, people get angry and they'll be replaced. And I think they want to keep their gigs in Congress.
I totally agree. One of the things I was actually just reading was the amount that they actually pay out per year, and it is over $1 trillion. So when I see that, and you think about GDP, and where what do people do with their Social Security checks? I think it'd be catastrophic to our overall economy. So I think they'll get it addressed. I don't know how, I don't know when, but it needs to get addressed.
It really does. So what else are you here to share with us, so we understand what the heck's going on in these lives?
Other things. Yeah, I mean, I have seen this over the years. Where Social Security overpays, and most of the time that has to do with people that take their Social Security prior to full retirement age and continue to work. There is an earnings limit. So if you've overpaid, I guess since COVID, they weren't withholding checks. Mm-hmm. They were withholding about 10% of a beneficiary's monthly check to avoid financial hardship, because they have to pay them back. If they overpaid you, you have to pay it back. Well, now, starting this month, they're going to be withholding 100% of those Social Security checks until the overpayment has been resolved.
Let me interrupt here.
That could really hurt some people.
It really can hurt some people. We've heard about this over the last few years as well. This is nothing new. By the way, it has occurred like for a couple of decades. Every once in a while you'll see a story about this in Forbes or Wall Street Journal or Barron's, just to make sure. It's in Barron's, so you're depressed over the weekend, just as you've been depressed during the week if you're reading Wall Street Journal. And you just mentioned COVID, because I am, like, even before this election, I was seeing and sharing on the air a couple of times many more stories about Social Security clawing back over payments. And it's not the fault. In fact, a guy called in earlier today, Al called earlier today, we're talking about this. He brought up the subject. It's not the fault of the people who applied for Social Security, I don't think. It seems to me to be the fault of folks at Social Security. Or, since you just brought up this point about, they are working, they're getting the payments before their full retirement age, and the folks need to be aware. So some of this is indeed, the onus is on some of the people who were working while they're getting Social Security, and it was before the maximum age of, let's say, for example, 70?
Full retirement age, so it could be between 66 in a few months, or 67, depending on when you were born. Now, I will tell you, when you do file, and this is going to be the last thing, but when you do file, at least if you file online, they do ask you if you're not yet full retirement age, they ask you what your expected earnings are.
Yeah.
And it actually, it'll pull it up per month. So it says, like, in any month, will you be expecting to earn over X amount of dollars?
Right.
And you have to check that off. So, like, you do need to be, you want to be as accurate as possible with that. But, sometimes you get a pay rate. Sometimes, people work extra and they make more money. And in that type of situation, you should be reporting that to Social Security as soon as possible. But that actually kind of leads me to my next thing, because
but I have a question before you get to that. But if someone if somebody has hit their full retirement age, for example, 70, now they're taking full Social Security benefits, and they could be making $8,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month. So that doesn't matter, because they've hit their full retirement age and they get everything, no penalty, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, once you hit full retirement age, so it depends on when you were born. Between 1955 and 1959, it's 66 and 2 months, 66 and 4 months, depending on which year.
Yeah.
If you're born after 1960, full retirement age is age 67, and that is when there is no earnings test. You can make as much as you want, collect Social Security, and continue to make your wages.
Okay. What if, like me, you're born in the 1800s?
Well,
I wanted to give you a chuckle.
full retirement age has been getting pushed
brother,
back over.
Yeah, you and I have talked a lot, and you sound like you've had a very busy day today. That's how you sound like. You know, you could hear someone when they talk. If you talk to them many times, you know I've talked many times, and I could tell, man, you've been at the grindstone today. I mean, you've had either on the keyboards or pen to paper for most of the day. That's the way you sound today. It's like, man, you've been working your butt off. So I just wanted to give you a chuckle.
Tell Dan that. No.
Yeah, tell Dan that.
so last but not least, you may have been reading this, but they're saying this is because of more security issues. But like, if you want to make changes to direct deposits, if you are already enrolled, or if you do want to enroll, they're going to be moving away from the phone system. I will tell you, most of the people that I see or meet with, they're not going to do it over the phone anyway.
Yeah.
You know, you do it online. You have an account online. If you don't have an account, you got to create one. But there are extra security measures that they have in place. You know, like a two-step verification. You know, text messages. You know, that type of thing.
Right.
And it is. I mean, they're saying it is to reduce or eliminate fraud. So you know that. But, you know, I do know that some people absolutely rely on the phone, you know, to do these types of things. But because of these measures, it looks like, you know, for some of these changes or just to enroll, you have to do it either online or in person.
Yeah, I was reading about the changes. If you want to change your bank, for example, because you have the bank draft or your bank deposit, and you want to change the bank, they go, oh, you got to change the bank. You have to come in. And, you know, that actually makes sense because of all the bank fraud that's going on online especially.
I do agree. I know it seems like it may be an inconvenience, but I mean, I can't even tell you how many programs and passwords and two-step verifications and, you know, unique passwords that I get, you know, for basically everything at this point. And, you know, quite frankly, when it comes to bank and routing numbers, I mean, if someone, I mean, I hate to say it, but if someone grabs, you know, a check, you know, from you, they have that access, you know.
Andrew,
you know, if they can grab personal identifiable information, you know, people can take it. So, you know, I do think having the extra verification could help.
There are thousands of us in Delaware to whom that's happened, and I did use the pronoun us. It happened to me. So I mailed a check. I put it into this is a public service announcement too. I mailed a check and I put it into a blue box. Within a few days, I got a phone call from my bank asking, did you write a check for $10,400 to someone named, I don't know, Randy Goodyear or something like that? I said, what? No, they froze my account. And so they didn't honor the check. Somebody had stolen the check out of the blue box. And what they do is they whitewash it. So they were able to digitally recreate it, leaving my signature and just changing the deposit name on it and changing the amount of money on it. The check was for like, I don't know, it's a good number, like $800, but they changed it to like $10,400. So that happened to me. I had to go to the bank and get a new account number, and I got new checks and everything. Then I found out it happened to another guy up here in North Wilmington at the local bank here. He went on LinkedIn and was complaining about it. I talked to somebody at the post office. Apparently, it's happened to a few hundred people just around in Newcastle County over that short period of time. This is why I never mail a check into a blue box. I take it into the post office or I give it to a mail carrier. That's the public service announcement right there. And they can get the hold of everything. Like you said, they get your routing number, they get your account number, and they can just, I suppose, like now go online once they have that and change your accounts. So it makes sense when it comes to something as big as Social Security that you have to go in. Even though it's a pain in the butt, to me it makes sense.
I always tell people, you know, excuse me, especially if you are planning on taking Social Security, you know, relatively soon, make sure you set up your account, set up your, you know, just, you know, it's ID.me or you can actually use a Social Security account, but there are different logins. But my point is you do want to get that set up if you are planning on filing. Excuse me, just because you don't want to, you know, expect a phone call, and next thing you know, again, you have to come in for an appointment. That could take a month or two, before you actually sit down with someone. But I do, recommend for people to make sure, you're logging into Social Security, getting that process started. And then you understand it makes the enrollment a lot easier.
It really does.
You already have the enrollment. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember working with my dad and stuff like that, and anything that I could do with credentials online always made my life easier. So you got that. If you're going to first enroll, like for the first time, go in, make sure that that they know that you really exist and all. So Andrew Wood, these are all great piece of information. Anything else?
That is it for the day. I believe Sunday's tip is what the changes to the IRS means for you.
That'll be good to listen to. That's On the Money with Dan White, Sunday morning, right here on WDEL. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. It's on 101.7 FM and 11:50 a.m. WDEL. Also on your smartphone and mobile device, whatever it is you're using, you can listen to it on WDEL. Great stuff. Andrew Wood, Dan White and Associates. Thanks so much for your time, man. And I do highly recommend. Andrew's a great guy. You give him a call. 888-690-8820, 888-690-8820. Dan White and Associates. Sit down with the guy, and you won't be disappointed. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Rick.
Everybody take care.